This video is on factoring quadratics. Our objective is I can factor quadratics. This is part 6 where we're going to take a look at what happens if you have two terms and they're the sum of two squares. So it's going to look very similar to the difference of two squares, but in order to accomplish this sum of two squares, we're going to have to involve complex numbers, the imaginary unit I. So let's take a look at, if I put an I after this, what happens if I were to multiply this? Because remember, factoring is undoing the multiplication. So take a look, m times m gives me the m squared. Then m times negative ni is negative mni. And then ni times m is positive mni. And then lastly, we're going to have a minus, because a plus times a minus, n times n, I times I, n squared, I squared. Now what you have to recall is that I squared, using the imaginary unit and squaring it, you get negative 1. So here this could be negative 1 times negative n squared will end up being a plus n squared. So I'm going to just put above this that I squared is equal to negative 1. So we get from this m squared, these two guys are similar terms but opposites, so they get rid of each other. And then I end up with a plus n squared because of the I squared equal to negative 1. So we can factor the sum of two squares if we use this pattern, m squared plus n squared equals m plus ni and m minus ni. And again, it can be, the plus and minus can be reversed if you want to. You can do it either way. So let's take a look at these two. Notice that this is a perfect square, that's a perfect square. And so what I'm going to do is factor it by doing the square root of x is just x and x. X squared is x and x. 100 is just 10 and 10. And then I'm going to put an I after each of these in order to get that pattern, and then just put a plus and a minus, and it's factored. So if you have the sum of two squares, you just take the square root of the first, square root of the last, put an I after the last term, and put a plus and minus. So for this one, I'm going to just do my factorization of 11x. I'm going to put a plus and a minus. It can be a minus and a plus if you want to. Square root of 36 is 6. I'll put an I after it. And I've got my factorization of two squares. So follow the pattern. Difference of two squares, you don't have the i's involved with the minus here. But when you have the sum of two squares, you have to put the same type of pattern with one minus, one plus, but have an I after the last term to get your factorization.